cements, the so-called concrete sand or sharp sand or sandblasting sand. That's what you want to put down as a base underneath it. Now, if you're really concerned about things moving, after you put your sand base down and after you get it leveled, and the way you level it is with a 2x4, a straight 2x4 hopefully, or something like that, and you do what's called, it's called screeing it. Get one person on each end and just drag it across so that you've got a nice level surface. If you really want things to stay in place, then get a bag of powdered cement, not concrete, but cement. The cement is the stuff that binds concrete together. Concrete is a mixture of sand, gravel, and cement usually, but you can buy, and it's very inexpensive, very heavy, but you can buy a bag of just what is powdered cement and just get out and dust it lightly over the surface of your sand. Don't need to moisten it or anything else. But then when you put your bricks or your paved stones or whatever else on top of it, believe me, it will be very well locked into place. We refer to that as just stabilizing the base that it goes on. There's room in here if you guys want to come in and sit down. Oh, okay, well, maybe so.
It's cool, there's fans here.
Hey, yeah, see, the smart people got right underneath the ceiling fans this week. But stabilizing the base can be important. If you're laying down a brick patio or sidewalk or something like that, after you have your bricks in place and after you've kind of, you can get a rubber hammer, literally is what we use when we're redoing walkways and things here, and just kind of firm them into place. But to really lock brick into place in a sidewalk or in a patio, take fine sand afterwards and just spread it dry on the surface of your patio and go back with a broom. Sweep it back and forth. Come out the next day, sweep it back and forth. I see people that think they're going to take a hose and wash the sand down between the bricks. It doesn't work. It goes down between your brick and locks in place a whole lot better if you sweep it in dry and just let it settle down between the bricks. Do that for 2 or 3 days. You'd be amazed how easily it locks into place. Now, talked about leaving the soil down between at a lower level if you want to plant in between. But we always get the question about tree roots. People are so concerned, and this kind of goes back to design, how close can you plant a tree to an existing home or structure or whatever? And people always think that tree roots are going to go under the foundation and start causing a whole lot of problems. Tree roots do not make their way underneath foundation. The purpose of the roots of a plant are to absorb water and to absorb nutrients. And in order to grow and survive, there has to be plenty of oxygen in the soil. The top of a plant and its root system are totally different. The green foliage on top of the plant takes in carbon dioxide, gives off oxygen. Doesn't happen with the root system. The root system is more like an animal. It takes in oxygen and gives off carbon dioxide. Now, why is that important? Underneath a slab, a concrete slab, do you have any water in the soil? Not to speak of. Do you have any nutrients in the soil? None to speak of. Do you have any oxygen in the soil? None to speak of. So why would a tree root want to grow underneath the house? It doesn't. Even if that root is fairly close, even if that tree is fairly close to your slab, the roots are going to grow away from the foundation. They're going to grow out into the yard. And yet I see foundation people that come along, and if that tree is within 10% of the foundation, oh, you guys got to cut this tree down, it's going to ruin your house. No, it's not going to. But stop and think. If you're building a home and you're pouring concrete on top of pre-existing roots, well, then you may have a problem. And if you're going to pour, say you're going to go out and pour a slab for an outbuilding or something like that, you need to dig, you know, a beam trench, in effect, around the edge of that slab and cut those tree roots. Because if those tree roots are already there, they're going to continue to grow and expand, and they're going to move whatever is on top of them. Now, again, stop and think about roots. People always tell me the roots are coming to the surface of the ground. Not. I mean, tree roots don't move up and down in the soil. They're at one level, and that's where they're going to stay. But if that tree root was this big around now, and 10 years from now it's this big around, it grew about half up and half down. And if it was an inch below the soil to start with, now it's going to be up on the surface of the soil, and it might potentially cause problems. The tree roots don't rise up in the soil, and I think anybody that thinks that through will realize that. But I hear that question 3 times a week. My tree roots are coming to the top of the ground. What do I do? Yes, ma'am.
How much does it damage a mature tree to cut that root before you repair that crack?
That's a good question, and most trees will survive the removal of a number of roots on any one side of the tree. Don't go all the way around it and cut all the roots on a tree. But Ed Etter, who is the best arborist that we know, gave me a great formula one time that they use as far as somebody that wants to trench or cut along one side of a tree, and that's how far away from the tree you need to stay to avoid doing severe damage to the tree. And it's real simple. Take the diameter of the tree in inches, take half of that and convert that to feet. If you've got a tree that's 10 inches in diameter, how far away should you say? Well, half of 10 inches is 5. But feet instead of inches, stay 5 feet away from that tree and you'll be okay. 24-inch tree, half of that is 12. Stay 12 feet away from the tree with your trenching. That is a general rule of thumb, is how close you can come to the base of a tree and cut roots without seriously impacting the tree. Real easy to remember, but can be real important if you have to go through the problems of like replacing an old sewer line, or CPS suddenly decides that they need to run something, around alongside the roots of your tree. But always remember, just half the diameter, convert that to feet, and that's how far you should stay away from it. One other thing on cutting tree roots when you're digging. If you have live oaks or red oaks, you can infect a tree with oak wilt just as easily through a cut root as you can through a cut on the top of the tree. If you're digging and trenching, whether you're planting landscape plants, whether you're putting in a sprinkler system or anything else, fill that trench back in as quickly as you can. If it's not going to get filled in quickly, go ahead and use pruning paint on your roots, just like you would on a cut made on the top of the tree. One last thing on the subject of oak wilt, because I've seen a lot of it this week. But oak wilt moves from one live oak to another through the root system of the tree. It doesn't move quickly. But if this were a tree with oak wilt, and this were a tree over here that didn't have it, those roots have come together and they've fused to form one common root system. And that disease will slowly move through the roots of that tree and up into this tree. The important thing that I want to, and I don't want to get into a discussion of oak wilt, we can do that another day, but if you're ever cutting down a live tree, a live oak or a live red oak, you're going to cut the tree down completely and get rid of it. If it's a live tree, paint the stump. You say, oh, why? The tree's gone, the tree's dead. You've got that open cut stump right there, and you get oak wilt introduced into that stump, which then spread through those old roots into the surrounding trees. So anytime you're doing any pruning, anytime you're cutting any roots, anytime you're cutting a tree off at ground level, be sure that you coat the wound to keep the insects out that could potentially carry the disease. Now, on the subject of tree roots, a lot of times in creating our landscape plan, as we talked, you got to get away from having as much grass and things like that. We want to do decks, we want to do hardscape, we want to do things like that, patios and all. I would try always to avoid pouring a slab over an existing root system of a tree. You say, but that's where I want my patio, out there in the shade of that tree. That's all well and good. But you've got those tree roots, and those tree roots are going to continue to grow, and if you pour a solid concrete slab on top of it, the tree roots are going to break the slab. It's as simple as that. Use paved stones. Use flagstone. Use something that is not bound together in a hard surface if you're going to create patios and things like that out over the existing root system of a tree. If you just have to have concrete, and granted, some people may have to move a chair or, be unable to walk on a surface that's not really smooth and hard. But if you're going to pour concrete over the roots of a tree, cut it up in small sections and put expansion joints, that kind of pasteboard looking material that you put down through the slots in the concrete. Because I can promise you, tree roots will break a concrete slab and will do it fairly quickly. But you can create a gorgeous patio with the paved stones, with the concrete pavers. I think I mentioned last week, Alamo concrete tile and pavers down there, the Alamo Dome. One of the greatest sources for all kinds of pavers. Some of them look just like brick. Some of them, you'll have different colors, you'll have different shapes. But that's the kind of material that we want to use for making patios and walkways. We don't want to pour solid concrete any way that we can avoid it. Another